Sarah hates it when we begin the show like this. Maybe we should start it as like,
I don't
what
hate
have you
it.
not
I just
been
think it's
drinking?
funny. I think it's funny.
Like, do you think like if somebody came in and had just started listening to the show and they were listening to episodes back to back, they'd be like, oh fuck, she's drinking tea. Okay, we know. I am drinking.
You should change up and lie like each time. You should be like, I'm drinking sriracha.
I'm drinking sriracha. Yeah. I will say I did like I brought my vintage teacup out today because it felt very Tammy Faye. So I went with the vintage teacup.
I tried to put on a lot of mascara.
Oh my God, Sarah, I would love if you would try to Tammy Faye. I would love it so much. Oh, that is a lot of mascara for you, actually.
It's a lot of mascara, but it's like
but it's not Tammy Faye.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
I feel like you would have had to put on very serious fake eyelashes to even get close to Tammy Faye.
And like the glitter streaks right here.
That was fucking insane. I don't want to spend this whole show talking about her makeup, but it's very difficult not to talk about it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Feminine Mistake podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nicole.
I'm your other host, Sarah.
And today we have our returning guest, actor, writer, and director, Brandon Mitchell. Welcome, Brandon.
Hello. Yay. I'm so excited
to be here. Nice to see you.
Yes, welcome back. This is your third time guesting with us, right?
Yeah.
So it is. And it's funny because it's usually around Halloween, but this is not a
Sabrina.
We're not talking about a scary movie this time. Well,
what did
could be scary
the first two times? So I know one of the times was Sabrina.
Suspiria?
We're both Suspiria.
Suspiria was in fact we were singularly witch focused for some time. And now this is our first non-witch movie. But yeah, listeners, we're actually recording this in October. Hey, I got a lot to say about Tammy Faye. I got so much to say. Usually, listeners, we record a little closer when the episode comes out, which this one is coming out to you in November. But we wanted to record it really fresh. And The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is today's movie, was only in theaters for like a week. Like we had to rush to get our shit together to watch this. But I feel like it was worth it.
It was worth it. It was so worth it.
Yeah. So we're recording in October. Which is the time we usually record with Brandon, but usually we're doing some kind of witchy movie that's scary for October.
Well, at first too, I saw the poster of it, and for some reason thought I was like, "Is this a scary movie?" Because that poster of her face just is like scary clown, But it is Tammy Faye,
yes,
but completely different. So I'm not a.
I didn't see the poster.
You should look it up. It's pretty cool. I should have downloaded it. Do you want me to screen share it?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let me pull up the Eyes of Tammy Faye poster. We can do that now, Brandon, because we're recording this virtually, and I can just pull up anything on my computer anytime we want. I know,
Fancy.
Right? I know. We've technology. I actually do have some visual aids tonight, you guys. Just so you know, I did pull up some visual aids. So let me see. Ooh, there it is. There's that poster. Gorgeous. So we're going to be talking about The Eyes of Tammy Faye. Oh, that's a shitty copy of that. Let me find a better one. The movie we're talking about is The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And wow, it's actually surprisingly hard to find a good high quality version of this poster, you guys. I'm not going to lie. There we go. Maybe that's okay. I got one. The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which we were determined to watch, despite the fact that it was in a pretty limited release. I was actually shocked at how limited the release was. I don't know about you guys, but for some reason I was like, what do you mean I can't just stream it?
Exactly.
Very limited. Used... I'm sorry, go ahead, Brent.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, but it was nice because we got, I managed to get my husband out on a date, and we were the only ones in the theater, So I was like, let's see it. And it was a good movie too. But yeah, we were the only ones in there, and I kept waiting. I was like, is somebody going to come? We're going to get somebody in.
There's another poster I found.
Oh,
that's her, like, doing the...
Oh, yes.
Background.
Okay.
Like a gilded.
Oh, interesting. That might be from the documentary, because there's a documentary called The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
It's her.
Maybe that's the one that I saw.
It's Jessica Chastain. Well, this is the one I thought you were thinking of, Brandon, which the poster we're looking at, listeners. Of course, if you want to see our faces and or this visual aid, you can watch our vidcast of this podcast on Critical Crop Top's YouTube channel. But we're looking at Jessica Chastain as Tammy Faye. Just sort of a little bit of her face, mostly covered, her hands covering her face and sort of
like
looking down. Yeah, like she's crying, or she's like, I don't know, embarrassed or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on in this poster. I absolutely love movie posters that say a lot with a little. I think that's a real challenge. And then
that is the
is that the documentary?
The doc, yes. Let me show you what I found.
Oh, okay. So let me stop the screen share. Sarah's, we're going to be trading visual aids tonight. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That one's very campy, it feels like. So listeners, this one is like Tammy Faye, and it's like a gilded frame with like a heaven-like sky behind her, and she's just like coming out of the frame with like her arms open wide. I think I prefer the other poster. It's a lot more.
It's more
real, and I grounded. And I think we can talk about maybe like what is the tone of this movie. That's something I certainly would like to talk about. But I guess before we do get into the Eyes of Tammy Faye, what have you guys been watching? Brandon, I know you said you've been watching some stuff.
Yeah, I've watched, we just finished the second season on HBO, The Other Two, which is about...
what is that?
It's a family, and it has, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to look her up real quick. From Saturday Night Live, she plays the mother, but she has 3 kids, and the youngest kid is a teenager, and he became like an internet sensation.
I know what you're talking about. Molly Shannon.
Shannon.
Yes, I saw a couple clips of this, and I'm very intrigued by it. I'd love to hear more. So you like this show?
It's so good. Yeah, it was so funny because you're really watching the brother and the sister, the older brother and sister, because he's been trying to become an actor, and she has just been trying to find herself, and it's like, and
the youngest brother becomes like an internet sensation, right? And then he's like the famous one, and they're the other two, and that's where the name of the show comes from.
The other two, and the mother,
played by Molly Shannon.
Molly Shannon's hilarious, and she decides, and she's
like this overbearing talk show mother, right? Isn't that kind of her character?
She ends up getting a talk show because she decides this is the year I'm going to say yes, because you learn about their father. And all of a sudden she has at the end of the first season, I think is when she gets her talk show, and she's just going and going and going. And the situations that they get involved in it's just hilarious, but it's so good because it's almost like something really good happens, but they always fuck it up.
Nice. Isn't that always the way? Yeah.
But it's really good. So I highly recommend that. And my other favorite, which we just finished, is Ghosts on the BBC. It's English, or it's I think it's also on HBO. But it's a BBC, and it's about a couple that move into this house that they inherit, and she ends up hitting her head, and then she can see the ghosts that live there, and they're all different, going all the way back to like a caveman. So
a caveman ghost. That's new.
So it's hilarious. I highly recommend it because there's only 6 episodes because it's
it's British. Series. Yeah, I love those British series, man. They really compact that story, and they're like 6 episodes and we're done.
Yeah,
Sarah's shaking her head. I can't tell if it's because you don't like British TV. You don't like it. I
do not like British TV.
What about Cuckoo though? We liked Cuckoo.
No,
you didn't like. Didn't like Cuckoo.
Not compared to American TV. It's not sophisticated. No offense to British,
that's
I don't know. Like it's just
shots fired.
I know. I'm sorry.
I would try this though.
Farcical almost. It's like
so you just don't like the tone of it. You don't like it as too goofy. But what about a British drama? Like a British drama, would that be like?
I did see a mini series that I loved. It was And Then There Were None.
Okay.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't like British comedy.
You don't like comedy. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Interesting. It's good. Well, here, what I just saw is that CBS is making a version of Ghosts.
See, why do we need to?
They did with Office.
Why do we need to do that?
They did that here. It's like, I saw that yesterday that someone posted, and I was like, why are you, it's almost the same sort of characters. I'm like, why are you just going to remake this? Just watch the British one.
That's what they do. Hilarious. And it's just like, it's silly now. The streaming shows have proven that people like shows that are not just that aren't American shows. Like, people will watch all kinds of stuff, and we don't need to remake everything.
I will say, I love The American Office. I love it. It went in so many different directions that the British Office, because the British Office only was one season, only a few episodes, and also it was shot in a very interesting, strange way. Like, there were no close-ups. It was shot as if being observed from afar.
Yeah, they really took that like voyeur camera to like the next level. Well, awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Those
You're
sound
welcome.
really good. I have been spending my time, when not watching movies for this podcast or the Adam and Andy podcast, I have been playing a Star Wars game on my VR headset. So that's what I've been doing. So I know this isn't a podcast about video games, but if you are a fan of, look, here's the thing. I have never been a big video game person. Like, we had an Atari when I was growing up, and I had a Sega Genesis, and I was really into video games when I was a kid, but I've never been like a big video game person. It's just like, I think I don't have the attention span to like finish it. But a Star Wars game that is in VR, where it's like, I am now a character in Star Wars, living in Star Wars, like, I could just live there. Like, I don't want to do anything else but play this Star Wars game. It's called Tales from Galaxy's Edge. And it's like, you're like a droid repair person who's like going around. It's like a questing type game. You're like picking up trinkets and rescuing C-3PO. And like, at one point you get to play like IG-88, this like, bounty hunter droid from The Mandalorian and Empire Strikes Back. And you like go into a like mob headquarters and have to bust up the place, and like, it's really fun. There's a few like Jedi side stories, and it's just it's gorgeous. The setting is gorgeous. Everything is beautiful to look at with the headset on, and I want to leave R and live in VR. That's really what I want to do.
Sarah's like, I would not want to live there.
Listen, Sarah, you haven't played my VR headset yet, have you? We've been talking about that, but we haven't done it yet.
No. Yeah, no,
it's awesome.
I'm telling you, Sarah.
And
Brandon and I have the same thing.
Huh? My face is about Star Wars, not about
because I'm talking about Star Wars again. Sarah has compartmentalized our Star Wars discussion to only in December on the Adam and Andy podcast when we talk about the sequel trilogy. I'm not allowed to talk about Star Wars unless we're talking about it on the Adam and Andy podcast.
You're allowed to. I don't want to make it seem like you're not allowed to. I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you putting up with my shit when it comes to Star Wars. But I will say
I love Star Wars.
I know you do. I think that I'm looking forward to you testing out my VR headset, Sarah, because I don't know about you, Brandon, but there are actually movies and things that you can watch in VR, like on the VR headset. There aren't a lot, but I'm really interested to see like where the form goes, because it presents an interesting challenge, because when you're watching something in VR, it's literally all around you. And usually when you're watching a film, the editor tells you where to look. Like, I cut to this, I cut to that. Or lighting draws your eye. And in VR, they have to draw your attention with sound, or what you're looking at in front of you has to be as equally important as what's behind you. And then if you choose not to look behind you, maybe you can watch it again the second time and catch new things. I don't know if you've had that experience, Brandon, but I'm just really fascinated with the problems that presenting a narrative story in VR present when you cannot tell the audience where to look as easily.
Yeah, it's because you've got to figure out, you have to start thinking, well, in that 360, if they turn around and look here, what are they going to see?
Mm-hmm.
What's this whole world going to be? And then if something going to be missed? If you look at it here, will the story keep going? Will they be lost or whatever if you're watching and it's like, well, you didn't look behind you to see that this was happening, so now you have no idea. And then just the filming aspect of it, of how you film in 360
and why tell a story that way.
You do it and then edit it all together. I don't know how the editor that kind of falls into your realm a little bit. If somebody's like, here,
I mean, I've never edited anything in VR.
All this together in 360.
Well, for one thing, you got to stitch the camera angles all together to make the 360. But what I've seen it done a couple different ways, where like there's a part of the everything's black, but one part of the image, and it shows you that, and then that starts to fade away, and sound will draw your attention over here, and then another thing will fade up. So I've seen it done that way, but I've also seen a video by Run the Jewels where the whole is always, and the whole thing is 360 the whole time. And if I'm looking ahead of me, I'm seeing part of the story. But if I look behind me, there's other stuff going on. And so I could watch that video a couple of times and get a different, not a different story, but different parts of the story. So that's interesting too. Sarah, you seem very stressed out by the idea of this.
Is protecting.
You're like, I will never do this
right now.
I know.
No, but I'm even stressed out by 360 photos. You know, when people post like 360 and you have to like move the photo to see the different sides.
You're like, I can't.
But yeah, used to it.
I mean,
it's overwhelming for some people.
I have to get used to stuff.
Too much.
Well, Sarah, I won't make you watch any 360 movies when I put the headset on you, but I think you would enjoy at least trying it out. It's like very interesting, sort of being immersed in a completely fabricated world. And I don't know about you, Brandon, but it was my solace during the pandemic to escape reality and just be in my VR headset as much as possible. That was the height of my VR obsession, was during the pandemic, for sure. That's when we got those headsets.
Did you read?
It's very fun to use. And
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't read any fic on my VR headset, Sarah, to answer your question. I think reading would be tough. But I do watch all the movies that all my movies I watch on VR now, because you can watch it like in a fake movie theater, and it looks, honestly, I've gone to the movies lately and been like, ooh, this isn't as good as my VR headset. Because the projection is so, like, because the image is so good. It's like this high quality image. You're completely immersed in it. You look like you're like in a fake theater.
Ever anyone talking too loudly or on their cell phone?
No, it's kind of creepy. Like, I'm talking specifically about the Amazon Prime interface. Like, other ones like don't look as good, but Amazon Prime, I don't know about if you've been in there, Brandon, in the Amazon Prime like theater. But it's like stadium seating. They got the little lights down the side. It looks like you're in a theater, but you're the only one there. It's completely empty.
If we both put on a VR headset, would I be able to sit next to you?
No, Chris and I really would like to do that. Or maybe, I don't think so. Maybe you could if we had a different account. But when Chris and I, this is going to sound so weird, but Chris and I watched a movie together on the VR headset, and we sat on the couch next to each other. But we could see each other in the theater, the fake theater. So we just like touched our hands so that we knew the other person was there. But it's like touching a hand that is disembodied because there's no person next to you.
There's still some limitations with that, because you can have friends and stuff, and you can play like Beat Saber and things like that with them, but then they're not really with them. You can just talk to them. Their audio, but they're not actually. There are some games where you could be characters together.
Why don't we play games together, Brandon?
We have to find out which ones, support.
I wish you could play Journey of the Gods with me and help me get rid of that Kraken.
Oh my gosh, yes, that would be awesome.
All right, I feel like I've talked about video games enough. Several listeners are probably like, why? But seriously, VR, it's fun. I dig it. So shall we talk about this movie? Everybody ready to talk about The Eyes of Tammy Faye? Okay, so before we get into it, I'd like to hear everybody's sort of, I guess, experience. Usually we talk about our experience with the movie prior to the podcast, but in this case, I feel like it extends to like your understanding of or experience or knowledge of Tammy Faye Bakker as a person going into this movie. Let's start with our guest, Brandon. So anything you kind of came into this movie with, that you brought with you into the theater, virtual or otherwise?
Really, the only thing I brought in was I knew Tammy Faye was, part of the televangelist, and that she wore a lot of makeup and kind of made fun. And I knew an inkling, a very little bit about her support of the LGBTQ community, but not that much. But really, it was like, all I know is she's just Jim Bakker's wife, wears a lot of makeup, was very big, and people would make fun of her. that was really about it. I didn't know much about her, the story at all.
I mean, we grew up when this was going on, but I was a very small child, or young enough that I didn't really watch the news. But yeah, I hear that. Sarah, what about you? Did you have any kind of knowledge of Tammy Faye Bakker going into this movie?
So I was born in 88. So by the time I was conscious, I learned about her from stories from my mom, because my mom was really like anti-televangelists who steal money from people. Like, so that was her story, was like the Jim and Tammy Faye basically committed fraud, and it was always a package deal. Like, it was always like Jim and
would go together.
Tammy Faye. It wasn't like Jim did it, he went to jail, and Tammy Faye was just like in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, so when I saw this film, I didn't know that there was like a separation there. And so all I know is basically bad things my mom said about them.
Sure. So it sounds like a lot of negative impressions of Tammy Faye, which I think is pretty accurate in terms of the way she's been, her legend has been in the media. My experience, Brandon, is very similar to yours. I was a child in the 1980s when Jim Bakker went to jail. And you remember that montage in the movie where they show all the shots of people making fun of Tammy Faye Bakker, like on like Saturday Night Live and stuff. In the movie, there's like a montage of like the mascara, and Jane Hooks on SNL is like wearing the mascara is like running. That's what I remember of Tammy Faye Bakker from my childhood, is like everyone making fun of her makeup, everyone making fun of her crying, Jim Bakker going to jail. I didn't know much about her as a person. My house, I'm sure we'll get around to talking about religion eventually. It's unavoidable in this film, I think. I was not raised in a household that we didn't go to church. I wasn't raised in a very religious household. My mother grew up Catholic, so religion was very important to her, but we were not raised with any particular religion. In fact, I used to watch the televangelists in the morning on the weekends when I was a kid, because I didn't really understand what they were. And I remember I grew up in Georgia and everybody went to church and I didn't go to church. And I was like, should I be going to church? Am I missing out on something? I feel like everybody has this thing that I don't have. And so I would watch the televangelists thinking, well, this is like going to church. But I didn't really like internalize. Did you ever
ask your mom to take you to church?
When I was older, yeah. I mean, it was complicated because, again, my mother was Catholic and my dad was Jewish, but he wasn't really practicing Jew, or is. I mean, they both are still. I guess you lived that way your whole life. But my mom like went to Catholic school Catholic. Like, she was like, Catholic.
She was in it.
And is she still Catholic? Or if that's too personal a question, then you don't have to answer.
I mean, she doesn't. I don't believe she attends church. I believe she is. I believe that she has her spiritual ties to Catholicism. My father is not really. Doesn't really. I would say identifies more culturally and ethnically as a Jew than religiously. And so in my house, rather than we didn't go to church for that reason. It was just like, it was a time where if you had people from different religions, it was just like, well, I don't know. We pick one or the other. We pick nothing at all. It wasn't like, I think now there are a lot more households where it's
like
acceptable to combine traditions. But it was a little bit more taboo, I think, in the 80s when I grew up, or at least in the area of town that I grew up in. So I was very fascinated with the church, but wasn't, particularly like, I didn't internalize the things I was hearing on television. It's like I heard stuff on the televangelist and I was like,
that's interesting.
I should form my beliefs around that. I was just like, I was like more fascitated with the spectacle of it. And I thought that's what church was like.
It's a show.
Documentary.
I mean, I expected church to be like that you would go and it would be all flashy and showy like that. And when I found out that it wasn't, I was like, God damn, this is boring. So that was pretty much it for me.
I didn't know that you watched that stuff.
Yeah, it was like, it was on a bunch of channels, and on especially Sunday morning, they all had all those channels everywhere. And I couldn't for the life of me tell you what I saw on them other than it was a lot of spectacle. And You know,
well, they have a few scenes in this film that have a bit of that, show a bit of that, where she's singing, and there's lots of costumes and set decoration and stuff. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, I mean, and they definitely were trying to cater to children at that time of day with their programming. At the time of day that I would have been watching it, they would have little puppet shows and things, and it's like, oh, it's like watching Sesame Street. I
think it was kids today too cynical for those puppet shows.
My kids certainly still enjoyed puppets when they were young, but you know,
I mean, it's like throw Mr. Rogers, you know, his puppets in, but just give it a religious tone to it, and you're going to watch it. There's just something different. You pick them up, and you're like, oh, they're puppets, and you're watching it, and then not realizing, it's almost like you don't realize it, that this is religion that's being taught to you.
Yeah, it's very it's like propaganda.
I mean, it's interesting. That's why I have my own ideas about religion, because we grew up Baptist, and I, tell people, I'm like, it was the 3-hour service. You go to Sunday school from like 9 to 9:45, and then you go to the service for 2 hours, and they'd have maybe a guest reverend or guest, preacher coming in, and then the choir would sing, and then you would sing, and then maybe some guest would come in and sing, and it would just go on. And did
they bring in lunch at some point, or like did they roll in a buffet table? Because I feel like I'd get tired after the first 2 hours and need a snack.
You were usually done about, noon. And for us, they would give me and my cousin like paper to kind of just draw on during all the, we had our Bibles, but I was like, I never knew what they were talking about and that sort of thing. And half the time I didn't go to Sunday school. So they always had a poster with all the little gold stars of everybody that had been there.
And you didn't have Sunday. A gold star.
And I had like 1 or 2 random here. Or then they'd be like, we're going to talk about this Bible story. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So even though we were sort of
you guys
religious,
weren't like
we didn't really
Baptist, or you weren't like every Sunday school. And
we would go to church every Sunday, but it would be like they necessarily wouldn't I wouldn't have to go to Sunday school, but we would go to the 2-hour church and very religious. And then at some point it stopped. It was very interesting. Cause it's like, I remember my grandmother, she was in her 50s when she got baptized there. So I remember going to her baptism but then it's like, it just kind of stopped. And I was like, oh, we're not going to church anymore.
By the way, I just want you to know that while you said that, I was picturing an older woman in a bathing suit getting dunked in a very large baptismal tank, which I know is not what happened. But for some reason, that's what I pictured when you were saying that.
There was like a little window, like if the stage and everything was up here, up front, just think like a theater. Up above the top would be a little, almost like a window that would open up, and that's where you would see them stand, and then you'd see them dunk down into a pool, I guess, that was in the back there, and then they'd come back up, and then they would close the curtain. It was very theatrical. It was always very interesting, when it came down to it. But I just remember going to church, and then that was it. But I always remember the whole gold stars. I'm not getting the gold stars. They're like, let's talk about this religion. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Churches have a really nice way of knowing how to exclude you, and saying like, like really? You didn't come to school, you didn't come to church enough, so we're not going to give you the gold star.
I was baptized against my will when I was a baby.
Yeah.
And the water burned my skin because I am a demon child.
So now I'm picturing little Sarah being dunked in a tank and smoke just rising.
Yes. No, actually, the very first time I had a crying fit was my parents. I think I was like 11 weeks old. My parents took me to a wedding. As soon as I walked over, they took me over the threshold of the church. I started to scream, and I hadn't ever screamed like that
because
before.
You were like, "Listen, man, I'm an atheist."
Yes, exactly. Well, or the Antichrist. No, no. But yeah, so I grew up. My parents are not very religious. My mom likes the idea of it, but she's also not very religious. But we went to church occasionally when I was a little kid, but I didn't start going to church until I was in middle school, because at that time I wanted to be in a show in middle school. Like my best friend at the time belonged to this church.
Oh yeah, no, I wanted to be on the softball team. That's why I started going to church, Catholic church. I wanted to be on the softball team.
the rule was like to be in these shows or
Yeah.
this show in particular, you had to be a member of the church. And so I just started going to church, and like
That's
I
my
started
girl.
going
That's a
youth
true
group.
performer right there.
Seriously.
You're
and
like, I will
started
get
going
this
to
role.
youth group, but the youth group was like group therapy. It was like free group therapy. And so for like 5 years, I had like 5 like really stressful years in a person's life, like middle school and early high school. I had this like weekly group therapy, and it was just like,
oh, well, that's nice.
So great.
That's good.
And they didn't care that I was an atheist. Like I didn't hide that. I wasn't like,
oh, that's very interesting.
I, shared that, and like they were very accepting. They were like, you don't have to. Like I went to a Methodist church, and they were just very like open and warm and accepting of everyone. And there was no like, you will be punished if you do this, or you will go to hell if you do this. It was more like, it was therapy, basically.
That's
like
that's really positive. I'm glad to hear that.
Church and the youth group, yeah.
I I have a really complicated relationship with religion. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but I didn't know I'd never heard of church until I was about 8 years old. There were some friends in the neighborhood who invited me to church, or at least I didn't know what the concept was. Maybe I had heard the word, but my friends invited me to go to church with them. And I was like, what is church? And they were like flabbergasted. They were shocked. They were like, it's where you go to talk about Jesus and how much he loves you. And I was like, who's Jesus? And they were like, and that's when their mom got involved. And she was like, why don't you go home and ask your mom about this stuff, honey?
Are you serious?
Yes. Well, because I think she didn't want them. What she wanted was for my mom to explain it to me. And
did she know that your mom was Christian?
Yes, I mean,
your mom
they were friends. They were friends.
Jewish?
They were friends. Yeah, and this group of friends were Catholic, and my mother was Catholic, and so like I think she was like, why don't you go home and ask your mom? And she wanted me to talk to my mom about it rather than find out about it from the neighbor kids. So
the last thing you want to do is find out about Jesus from
on the streets, like a commoner. And then from that moment on, the entire neighborhood was like trying to get my sister and I to go to church. They were trying to save our souls. They were giving us Bibles. I think at the time, and this goes back to why I was watching these televangelist shows, I think what I wanted was the belonging. There was like a club that I couldn't join, and I wanted that belonging. And I think now what I like about religion is or even Catholicism is I like the ritual. I like rituals. I like the smell of old Bibles. I like the smell of the incense. I like the ornate costumes. But when I sat in those pews, I didn't feel like I belonged there. Like what was being said to me, it just generally never felt. It always felt false to me. And that's when I realized like this really just isn't for me. Like this doesn't speak to me or my life or my worldview. And I'm glad that religion brings order to people's lives and comfort to them. I think that is a positive thing. And I think it's a positive thing to have belonging. It's just, it was just not something in that type of environment. It just didn't work for me. Yeah.
And I agree with you on that. I think it brings people together. It does create good. A lot of people then come together and they help families. It's and give that for a lot of people that feeling of belonging and being a part of something. But then there's that other side of religion that really, does prey into that of people wanting to feel a part of something so much that you start to exclude other people. We get into that part of religion where we are also using religion then to condemn people when really it should be to support people and to be good. And then all of a sudden we get that, but you're going to go to hell
or
because
to
you don't believe in this or
to manipulate people, which is what happens in this movie. And we haven't even gotten into the movie yet. So let's
get brings into the whole televangelist part
about.
I think all of this was a good warm up. I think we needed to talk about this stuff to get there. But now let's get right into talking about the Eyes of Tammy Faye.
The house is a mess, Jack. The kids are a mess, Jack. You're a mess, Jack.
You have been a total bitch ever since you came to New York.
You seem sort of distant.
Let's just do it, huh?
You look stupid and rich. Stupid and rich.
Fascist.
All right, let's get into it.
These eyes cry every night.
The Eyes of Tammy Faye. 2021, I guess. I mean, it's been on the festival circuit, but directed by Michael Showalter. And then, of course, starring Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield.
God, those two. I mean, especially Jessica Chastain. He did a good job too.
Did you guys like this movie?
100% yes.
Yes.
It was excellent. It was really good. It was a wild ride. I immediately got in the car and started taking notes. And my first note here is Jessica Chastain deserves all the awards.
Mm-hmm. She really disappeared.
I was blown away at the ending. Like Sarah and I just turned to each other and we were like, "Holy shit! Wow." I don't know. Where do you guys want to start with talking about this? I mean, I feel like we started talking about religion. That was kind of where we came from right before we got into this. But
well, how about how it starts? Like how they meet?
Mm-hmm.
No. It starts with her being a kid.
She's a kid, and again, it's that belonging. Like she wants to come to church, but her mother won't let her because I guess she's from a former marriage. And so the other kids are allowed to go to church.
She might not be from a former marriage. She
That's
could
true.
be I don't like to use the word. You know what I mean? The B word.
Yeah. So her father. All we know is the father is not in the picture anymore.
Yeah.
And the mother is now remarried. Loved her husband, by the way. The stepdad was awesome. I remember that actor from Lost. He was the FBI agent or whatever that was tracking Kate. Who was on the run in Lost, and I hadn't seen him in a while.
Also,
he was really good.
The demon with the yellow eyes in Supernatural, that show.
Oh, but here he was playing like a fatherly, like kind figure, and I was suspicious. I was waiting for him to be a jerk, but he was like, he was supportive
until the end.
Yeah. So they I guess we could call this a Pentecostal church. Maybe that's the speaking in tongues kind of church, right?
Yeah, I guess is that Pentecost or the speaking in tongues? I was thinking, the snake handler kind of, that sort of church, and it was very interesting that I thought her mother didn't want her to be there, and I was like, is it because of the church that she was there? And then of course she says it's because you're from or because she's divorced, and they're going to remind people of my marriage, which is why I thought she might have been from the first, marriage. But, her mother's character was very interesting because you thought at first she wasn't going to be very supportive of her. And then even for some of the previews, it was like, she didn't like what she was doing, but she was still, it's like she wanted her to be religious, but not.
Well, I think her mother was the sort of emotionally closed off, I mean, I would say her mother was not very supportive. She definitely was not open with affection. She was very critical. She wasn't wrong some of the time. Like her mother knew that there was something fishy about what Tammy Faye and Jim were doing with all that money, but yet eventually she did allow herself to indulge in it. I think what Tammy Faye wanted was love and affection and adoration, and she was not getting it at home. That's what I think. But Cherry Jones playing the mother, also excellent. She was really great.
But you really did not like her character.
I definitely didn't, but there were moments like I hope you guys don't mind if we jump around a bit, but when Tammy Faye overdoses on the pills and her mother is like, it's not your time yet. I don't want you to go. And they have that talk, and she kind of really as much as she can confesses her sort of feelings about Tammy Faye and how much she cares about her. That was a really poignant scene. I thought it was really played beautifully. And the fact that her mom always hung on to that coat, that was really nice touch. I thought that was a really interesting character. I don't know, Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to say about her mom?
I like love and affection. And so it always makes me sad when I don't see someone who's in that position, like the mom, the dad, the partner, who's not showing their person enough love and affection, but I guess her mom did care about her in her own way. But their love languages just did not match.
I don't know what her mom's love language was. I couldn't pinpoint that, to be honest. I think that her mom maybe was not used to getting. Maybe her mom wasn't used to getting affection either. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Jim and Tammy Faye? They're kind of the central figures of this movie. So my note is religion is how you end up getting married just so you can get a hand job. Because that was like, it was like, okay, so they meet, they like each other, they hit it off, and they're making out, and now next thing you know, they're married.
Yeah.
And she's giving him a handy in the bathtub.
Yeah. What Brandon said, that probably did happen a lot.
I think so, for sure.
Have sex, because if not, that way you don't go to hell. You know, let's get married.
Yeah, and back then it wasn't as big of a deal for it, like marriage, but like in all the films I've seen from back then, it was a very like, I want to have kids, I want to have someone support me, or I want to support someone, and this is just what you do. And it's like the first guy you see who would like could have kids with you, or that you like in some way, you like the way they look, you like their voice, you like something.
You want to give them a handy in the bathtub.
That was it. There was no deeper like.
Can you imagine though? Can you imagine getting married to someone, to tying yourself to them for the rest of your life because you're horny? Can you imagine in the height of horniness making that decision? Because I got to tell you,
I've never been that horny.
I got to tell you, if that was the way I lived my life, I would have made some very poor decisions. Very poor.
You would have married.
And then the fact that you can't
times.
get divorced.
I would have married.
You've got that. You've got that against you, where you're like, but now I can't be divorced, because that's of course looked down upon in the church. You know. And
well,
it's like.
And this is something they touch on a bit in the movie, I think. It's about like this whole, and this is one of my big issues with the Christian religion, is the whole patriarchal nature of it, where like the man is in charge and the woman is, you know, in this time period, women didn't have very many options in America, in a predominantly sort of Christian country, where most people were going to church and were indoctrinated with this sort of, you know, even if women go to college, it's really just to meet a husband, and, you know, they're supposed to get married young and have children, and that's their life. And like, I am a mother, I have children. I took almost a decade off of actively being in my career to raise my children. So I don't think that there is something inherently wrong with that, but the lack of choice and the, you know, not giving men a choice either. Like maybe not all men maybe some men want to be caregivers. Maybe not all men want the pressure of providing financially for their family, or having to be in a job that they don't even like that much because of the pressure of providing for their family. Like, I think it doesn't help anyone.
Some people don't want kids.
And that too. Yeah, absolutely. Not to mention the heteronormativeness of it all. Which is, I think, something that comes around later in the film when we discover that Jim is likely gay, and that's probably why that he's, or at least bi. He's having relationships potentially with men, and, you know, there's problems between him and Tammy Faye in the bedroom department, and that maybe he's had to repress himself and who he really is because of, you know, his career and religion,
sort of,
and all
you
of
get
that.
stuck in he gets trapped in the same thing, you know.
Yes.
Well, I have to get married because I have to have a wife and a family, and I can do this. And it's like, sure, I can do this. And then you realize, you know, I can't. So of course, you know, that's some of the aspects about this movie where, you know, it really was a little bit of that typical, you know, she's not getting the love here, and then she gets involved in a marriage and she wants to be married, but here the guy cheats on her. You know, men don't. She's got to be the woman that comes in and joins the men's club. There was that.
Yes.
It was almost very cliche of the
Mhm.
story of like, is this,
Mhm.
if I was putting a story together and be like, okay, she's got to come in and she's going to be the one loudmouth woman who's coming in and saying, I'm really going to do this. And then, she gets cheated on. And it's just,
does she though? I mean, she does later, but like, I think it was unclear as to who cheated on who first. I think it's clear that he has an attraction and maybe a relationship with the guy who's running the show. The Jim Bakker's, but it was like, I don't know if the movie decided not to.
Floor.
Sure, but did they cross the line, the same sort of line that she crossed? I don't know that the movie confirms or denies that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't put it past someone in that time period to accuse a woman of being a cheater, even though they had done it themselves and just didn't want to admit it. I wouldn't put it past them. But according to him, he didn't cheat on her until she had cheated on him. That's what he says. I'm just pointing out what the story tells us.
And then even when you watch it in the movie, it was like what was interesting, because I also looked up, what really happened against, what was in the documentary. But, like when he finds out and she's upset, after she has the baby, which that scene, apparently that was something that was for the movie of when he tells her, you did this, and makes her feel really bad. And I'm like, all she did was that she kissed him. She kissed this other person, and that was it. She didn't have sex with him. She didn't.
No, it was a little harmless dry humping. Just a little dry humping.
Said, and then he even stopped it. But it was like, he didn't say anything. But then he later on, when you find out, he's like, oh, well, I cheated. He did. He went all the way.
Well, what he did was much worse. And also and
it was worse.
Yeah.
And she never said, it was not like, I didn't do that. We didn't have sex. We kissed. I was thinking, you're just kind of, you kissed.
Right. But to her, that is, somebody. I mean, to
it was
her,
wrong for
in
her,
that, right. But
in
here. That, I think in that community, kissing another man would be the same, almost same as having sex. But also, I would like to point out that if my husband dry humped a woman in a recording studio, I would be furious, fucking furious. So I just gonna put that out there. Do we like Jim and Tammy Faye together? You don't. Let's talk about that.
I just don't like Jim.
You don't. What is it you don't like about him, though?
I don't like his personality.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He's. I don't know. I don't know why I don't know. He kind of creeps me out. Like his mentality, the way he seems, kind of not very genuine. Like he talks in like a sing-songy, always with a smile on his face.
So he seems fake to you.
He seems fake, yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm trying to say he's not weak, but
I think he's a bit weak.
When you look at Jimmy Swaggart and Jerry Falwell and all the rest of them, it's like he was sort of that hanger on of trying to be like them, but he wasn't. He didn't have that particular kind of personality, but he was still kind of not skeevy, but just, you would be like, be a man. Come on, step up, support your wife.
They also seemed.
It was almost like
they both seemed. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, they both seemed like kids, like big kids. Like throughout the entire film, they both just seemed like immature and like emotionally, I guess.
And maybe in a world where everyone's allowed to be themselves, Jim would have been a less dominant person who didn't feel like he needed to be. Like, not every man has to be aggressive or dominant. Like, men don't have to be like that. In the world of toxic masculinity, they do. But in a world where we can be ourselves and Tammy Faye can be the more dominant person, I think that dynamic works because Jim follows her lead. It was just not socially acceptable for him to do so. Now, to Sarah's point, I wonder what you'll think about this, Sarah, but as I was watching it, I began to think about another movie we watched for a different podcast called While We're Young. And I was thinking about Adam Driver's character, Jamie, and I can't remember what Amanda Seyfried's character was named, but remember the artsy couple in Noah Baumbach's While We're Young and how they're like charismatic and fun to be around, but ultimately very shallow and manipulative, and they only think about themselves? That's what I felt about Jim and Tammy Faye. They reminded me of the religious couple version of that couple from While We're Young, where the two of them, it was like two people who are so incredibly selfish who met each other and immediately were like just this explosive atomic bomb of selfishness. Like they found the right person to help them build their fucked up empire. Like we may yes, Jim is a little schmarmy. He is definitely not maybe a little bit lacking in backbone. But also what I do like about him is that he was not afraid to defer to Tammy Faye. Like he didn't seem to do it in public, but in private, he was like, yeah, that's a good idea. You're right. Let's do that. Like he wasn't like, I'm the man and we're not going to do it because I say so. Like he knew that Tammy Faye had the good ideas and he knew that she knew how to make their raise their stature. He knew that and he went along with it. And so that is something that I applaud him for doing, actually. And again, I'm talking about the character of Jim Bakker, not the real person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found them to be, I'm trying to remember let me get the note out that I actually wrote about this. Greed versus caring about other people. So they seemed to both care very deeply about others while also being incredibly selfish. Like everything they said they were doing for other people, it was always also all about them. Like Tammy Faye genuinely seemed to want to help people. Like that seemed to be something she really cared about. And Jim also seemed to care very much about his flock or his partners or whatever he called them. But they're so blinded by their what they believe they've been chosen for this mission that they're not seeing all the ways that they're actually hurting those people by taking their money. Anyway, that's what I saw about the two of them.
Yeah, because they talk about that. And that's one thing that I was thinking is like Tammy Faye, what it showed me here was almost that she cared about people. That was her number one thing, and then, Jim was able to give her that when they were together she was like, oh, he's helping to create the empire so that she can reach people. And she kind of sees that's what they're doing, but he starts to veer off and it becomes this, like very early on, I started to realize even this whole televangelist world, how it's very corporate. Jerry Falwell is like, I'm going to stay up here. Oh, Jim Bakker's coming up. What can I do to keep him down? Or I'm going to take over his show, or try to get him out. So that way I stay at the top. And it all became about this money. And that's where
politics
there's the fault with it. Even at one point, Tammy Faye says, we shouldn't be involved in politics. Why are you mixing the two? We shouldn't be involved in it. And they look at her like she's crazy because the church always gets involved in politics and the money. And, at one point she says, like the two lines that stick out where, at one point she says, we're not doing anything wrong. And he's like, is that a question?
Yeah.
Something. And then at the very, at the end, he says something which I kind of felt like, oh, he's almost repenting a little bit, but I'm like, I don't think he would really say this, but something of like, were we only, what was it? Something like, are we only helping the rich people? Were we only answering
I think what he said was, are we teaching people that being poor means that they're not loved by God or that they're not, something like that. Are we teaching them that if you're poor, you're unworthy? Something like that.
If you can't give us money, because that's where the whole thing of televangelist, and give us money and you'll go to heaven or we'll answer your prayer. And if you don't have money, and that's where it's like, how do you not see that? How do you not see that that's wrong? Especially if you're a religious person that's why even now, I don't want to get off the subject of the movie, but even, who's the big televangelist now? I need to have a jet and I need to have this. And I got in this whole discussion with Danny about it of like, well, they're paid from the fund that people, put in. So should they take a salary? And what should someone's salary be that is reaching people? And I'm like, there's a perception there. Joel Osteen he's like, oh, I don't take a salary, but what he's doing allows him to write books, do press releases,
well, he probably learned a thing or two from Jim, and Jim's like, he's like, I'm not taking that money, but I'll take this money. I'm not going to do a Jim Bakker.
Business, but that's where at the end I was almost like, really? No, I don't see him feeling that way, but it was a great line, and it really
Right.
hit home as to what was going on.
They
But
also-
that's what I really felt about them, is that Tammy just wanted to do good. And then, because it's almost like building into that lie, God is giving us all of this good stuff. We're getting all of this money from God. So
And
that
part of it is that
manifest
manifest destiny bullshit, you know?
And then you have to think, you're like, am I really getting this money from God?
But Tammy's not absolved here. Like
Oh.
Tammy wanted to be in the spotlight. Like she wanted to be a celebrity. I'm sorry, Sarah, what were you going to say?
Oh,
About Tammy, I think maybe.
Oh yeah, both of them they both seemed kind of oblivious to what they were doing was wrong. Like it wasn't that they were
Yes.
like, oh, we're doing this bad thing and we're trying. Shh.
No,
You
they
know,
were
it
like,
was more like,
we're doing a fine thing, right? It's okay. Maybe
Yeah.
just a little corrupt.
yeah,
The scene where Jim loses the car is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think it really sets up that dynamic really beautifully, where they walk out of the hotel room and Jim has clearly purchased this car that's beyond their means, and it gets repossessed or stolen or something. And Jim is just so bad with money immediately that he can't even hold on to their car. And
yeah.
the way that he just crumbles, and Tammy Faye is like trying to figure out like, okay, how are we going to get out of this? And then an opportunity just presents itself like right that second to swoop this sort of
Yeah.
Deus Machina, opportunity that brings them to the network. I
Yeah, and
think
it
that
seems like that
scene
I'm
was,
like,
well, yeah, but this whole movie
really
was
happen.
probably not. But this whole movie was like this. It was a bit of a fantasy, I think. In fact, I would like to talk about what is the tone of this movie? Like, what is the tone of this movie? Because it's not grounded in reality necessarily, but it's also not like magic. It's not like a net.
It's like drama. It's drama, but it's like.
But it also felt
weird.
comedic at times. Like it wasn't making fun of them necessarily, but the tone seemed satirical to me as well.
It was like kind of like
or absurdist, maybe
people. Absurdist, yeah. It was like
it was a little absurd.
It was like,
and I don't mean absurd like foolish. I mean that it was, and I think this is Michael Showalter's style. If you're familiar with his comedy, it had a tinge of absurdity to it. Like, things are not quite right. These folks are not quite right.
Yeah.
But also, I think there was an attempt to portray Tammy with humanity and say this was a human being and not just a clown with clown makeup on. And I think that's why they started the movie with her talking about her makeup. They're like, let's just get this out of the fucking way and talk about the makeup. And because it started in the past and we kind of slowly worked our way back up to the makeup, at that point we got to know the person underneath the mask, I feel like, a little bit more.
I will say that she was a little bit nuts. Like the way that Jessica Chastain portrayed her, it wasn't as if Jessica Chastain was making fun of her, but it was very like obvious that the people who were making the film were like, this woman is bizarre.
A bit. But I do really think and I'm going to, again, I hate to keep just like reading off my notes word for word here, but one of the things I said in my notes was, wait, where is it? Oh no, where is it?
I deleted it.
Fuck. Oh, I didn't think I'd end up rooting for Tammy Faye, but here we are. Like, I could not help but feel for her. Like, it's partly Jessica Chastain's performance, but also the way the movie was written. That yes, Tammy Faye is self-serving, and yes, she uses. Yes, she's kind of misguided and uses religion and prayer to basically say whatever it is that she wants it to say at the time that's most convenient for her. And yes, she's a bit materialistic and maybe even naive, all those things. But also her unending optimism, like the way that people kept knocking her down and knocking her down and knocking her down, and she would just put that smile on her face and decide, I'm not going to let them bring me down. When the boys are making fun of her outside the apartment when she's like at her lowest, you know, after she's living in this apartment, her ex-husband's in jail, you know, the boys are making fun of her, and she walks up to them and she's like, hi, I'm Tammy Faye, and you can make fun of me, but you got to shake my hand first, you know? Like that, that's fucking ballsy. Like that is brave to me.
Yeah, totally.
But that's what she did too. You know, that's what they portrayed. Like she would go out and do those things, you know, talk to people. Like she had the one little segment where she talked about the penile implant, which would be like, what? Who would do that? But she was like, people.
And that's not something people talked about in the 80s. No one talked about that stuff.
Exactly. But she was like, this is important. Someone is suffering from this. So we're going to put it out there.
I'm
you
talking
know,
to the
she
gay
has
man.
the interview with the gay pastor.
Yeah.
And who was Jerry Falwell, I think, was watching. They were like, what is she doing? What's this? And whatever, we can't watch this. You know, he leaves. But
to talk
this was the first time of someone to talk to someone.
To talk to a homosexual man with HIV and not to, you know, judge him and to be loving towards him, like that was just not something that people did in the 1980s. They did not.
And I think that really gave her that humanity that you're kind of talking about, of watching it where, okay, yeah, this person might be eccentric and do all of these other things and not necessarily she might be misguided in what she's thinking, but she's still like, but I'm getting all of this so that I can do good. I still want to do good. And it's almost that dichotomy of going, well, God, you were kind of so strange, but you really were trying to do something good. You just got mixed up in the wrong caught up in the wrong situation.
Or what she wanted and how much she wanted it overshadowed perhaps what maybe the right thing to do was.
Yeah.
You know, we can do that. You know, I can get these things and that's fine because I'm still doing these good things. I want to be a singer. So I'm
balancing out the scales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I'm doing this, but here, like she even said, you know, her mother was like, I don't want this coat. This too. No, it was almost like, I don't want this money for this coat.
I don't want
because
you
of what you're doing. You know, I don't want it. And eventually taking it. And she was like, go, you know, take it, mother. We deserve it because we're doing all of this.
I think it's interesting, Sarah, that you read that her rejection of the coat was a rejection of Tammy Faye. I read it more as her mother was never allowed herself to enjoy the pleasures of earth. That she didn't allow herself anything enjoyable. Like everything was so sour. Like I can't enjoy love. I can't enjoy sex. I can't enjoy this coat. And whereas Tammy Faye was like, I'm going to have a bed, the softest bed, you know, in the universe. I'm going to have like this luxurious house. I'm going to have a room just for relaxing. And I deserve to have nice things. And I think that was, to me, that's the way I read it, was that her mother just had trouble allowing herself to enjoy things.
I think that's true, but I think she also disapproved of Tammy, that she allowed herself to, like, she was like, she was simultaneously not allowing herself to enjoy it and judging Tammy Faye for allowing herself to enjoy those things.
And like a good religious woman, a good Christian woman would not enjoy that kind of stuff, that wouldn't need those kind of pleasures.
That's sinful. You're being opulent.
Yeah. Yes.
Or, you know,
God, religion, what a drag, you guys. What a fucking drag.
I'm so sinful with my opulent
house. Okay, what should we talk about next? I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff. So I did want to also say that I like that the movie goes into, like, I think it shows us like how religion can be used as a corrupting, kind of controlling thing, and how people like Jerry Falwell, by the way, great villain. What a great fucking villain. Real life villain portrayed perfectly as a villain in this movie. Like the way that Jerry Falwell is like he's like the fucking emperor from Star Wars or some shit. He's like fully on the dark side, you know? There's that kind of view of religion and how it's a corrupting force. But then like there's also this idea, I think, that for Tammy, religion also means never being alone or never feeling lonely. Like, as long as she can talk to God and pray, like she always feels like she's got somebody has her back, and there's something really comforting about that. And I see that. I also really like that we saw this sort of side of like, why, again, like you said, like why get involved in politics, and like why are we not embracing LGBTQ people? God doesn't make mistakes, like all of that, like really kind of challenge some of my viewpoints of like what people in that community think. And I know that there are people in the community, that religious community, like that, but there just don't seem to be many to
Was
me.
she the first one who said God doesn't make mistakes?
She said
Or-
that at the buffet, at the big buffet,
No, what I'm
when she
saying
was
is
holding the baby.
in our culture.
Oh,
Did
no,
she
I
come
don't
up with
think
that,
so.
Or no, okay.
I think that I'm sure that people have been saying it, but basically what she was saying is that because God created them, that's how they are, and God doesn't make mistakes. And I was like, wow, if only there were more people in the community like that. Welcome to Plug It Up. This is the part of the show where we talk about the things that we're working on and our guests are working on. Brandon, would you like to go first? What would you like to plug?
I would like to plug on stage Atlanta. I'm going to be doing Tuna Christmas.
That sounds exciting.
Depending on when this comes out, it's going to open, I think, a week or two after Thanksgiving. So it'll run the end of November through December. This is the first time that I'm learning stuff now, but I'm playing 10 different characters because it's just two people.
Wow.
So really working with Critical Crop Top and doing all of our sketch comedy has come in wonderfully, because these are like sketches and I have to play all these different characters and learn all these lines. It's crazy, but it's going to be really fun. So I would like to plug that. That's going to be in their new studio space there. And it's also running the same time as Willy Wonka, which will be on their main stage. So for Christmas, December, come on out to On Stage Atlanta and see Tuna Christmas, and then, Willy Wonka. But I would really love people to come out and see Tuna Christmas, because there's a lot of work that's going to go into that. We only have a very short rehearsal period. So.
Sure. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Sarah and I will have to come see that.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Awesome. So Tuna Christmas at On Stage Atlanta. Sarah, what would you like to plug? You've got your Instagram account.
Oh, we don't have to plug that.
Yes,
that every time.
Yes, we do. How else are people going to find out about it? I think we should definitely plug it.
So I have a new Instagram account that's a body positivity, clothing, makeup kind of account, where I post like pictures of me with fun makeup that I don't do for this podcast anymore because it's too late in the day for me.
I know, it's your bedtime. You literally take the headphones off and then just roll right into your bed.
It's after my bedtime. Yeah, exactly.
And what's that account?
It's Hedgehodges _bodpos. So that's HEDGEHODGES _BODPOS.
Nice.
It's a long name, but it's my personality plus bodpos. And I post things that are not just current hair and not hair. I don't do hair. I'm sorry. This is what you get.
Your hair
I air
is
dry
gorgeous.
my hair.
You've got the hair of a goddess.
Oh, thank you. But it's current photos, but also some pictures from my past, and talking about how I dealt with an eating disorder for 10 years and just had lots of weird body dysmorphia. And then I gained a ton of weight because of an illness I got. And then I had to I became plus size, and it was like my biggest fear my whole life was like, it came true. And so I don't know. It's just the story of that.
A journey of self-love.
Yes.
I love it. It's great. Awesome. It's a great account. So check that out.
Oh, thanks.
Hedgehodges _bodypos.
Right.
So I've got so a couple things I'd like to plug. All three of us were involved in the Critical Crop Top sketch comedy web show, which we shot virtually during the pandemic. All episodes of that are now available on our YouTube channel, Critical Crop Top. You can also find us, Critical Crop Top, on all the things at Critical Crop Top, and you can listen to Sarah and I on our other podcast where we talk about Adam Driver and Andy Samberg movies. We're about to go and get into a doozy. We're going to be watching The Last Duel. That's going to be the next one that we do. And so that is the Adam and Andy podcast, which spun off from this show. At Adam and Andy podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and at Adam Andy Pod on Twitter. And of course, you can find this podcast. You can argue with us about the Eyes of Tammy Faye. Tell us or tell us you agreed. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Sarah, you look like you were about to say something. At Feminine Mistake Pod, agree with Sarah only. Argue with the rest of us. At Feminine Mistake Pod on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter at Fem Mistake Pod. Brandon, thank you for joining us. Brandon will be back with us for part 2. We've been through one half of our discussion of Tammy Faye. Come back in 2 weeks, because we do the show twice a month, and we will be talking more about the Eyes of Tammy Faye. So Brandon, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's such a good movie.
We got you out of the witchy box. Witchy box.
Yeah.
All right, so listeners, come back and join us, and next time we'll continue our discussion about the Eyes of Tammy Faye.